The California sun beat down mercilessly on Camp Pendleton's training grounds, turning the already oppressive August afternoon into something that felt like divine punishment. Private First Class Maya Santos wiped the sweat from her brow, her brown eyes scanning the obstacle course ahead as Gunnery Sergeant Richard Hawkins' voice cut through the humid air like a serrated blade. Listen up, Marines. Today we're doing something different. Hand-to-hand combat demonstrations. Real combat. No padding, no mercy, no excuses. Maya felt her stomach tighten. She'd been at Camp Pendleton for 3 months now, transferred from her previous posting at 29 Palms after what the brass diplomatically called interpersonal conflicts. The truth was simpler and uglier. She'd filed complaint about harassment that went nowhere, and they'd shuffled her off to a new unit where she could be someone else's problem. At 5'4" and 130 pounds, Maya knew she didn't fit the stereotype of what people expected when they thought Marine. She'd spent her entire enlistment proving herself, only to be met with rolled eyes and condescending advice to maybe consider admin work. The assembled Marines stood in formation, their desert camouflage uniforms darkened with sweat patches. Maya stood near the back, trying to make herself invisible, a skill she perfected over the past year. Next to her, Corporal Jennifer Wu shifted uncomfortably. "This is going to be a shit show," Wu muttered under her breath, barely moving her lips. "Hawkins has that look." Maya knew exactly what look Wu meant. Gunnery Sergeant Hawkins had a reputation that preceded him like a bad smell. He was old-school Marine Corps, the kind who thought the integration of women into combat roles was the beginning of the end of military excellence. He never said it outright. He was too smart for that, but it showed in 1,000 small ways. The extra scrutiny, the impossibly high standards applied selectively, the training exercises designed to expose weakness rather than build strength. Corporal Miller, front and center, a stocky Marine with a neck like a tree trunk jogged forward, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust. Maya had seen Miller around. He was a decent guy, competent, nothing special. He stood at attention in front of Hawkins, his jaw set. "Miller, you're up first. Your opponent will be—" Hawkins paused, his eyes scanning the formation with theatrical slowness. Maya felt her pulse quicken as his gaze swept past her, then stopped, then returned. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. Not a friendly smile, but the smile of a cat who just cornered a mouse. Private First Class Santos, front and center. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Around her, she heard the sharp intake of breath from Wu, the barely suppressed snickers from some of the male Marines. Miller outweighed her by at least 80 pounds and had 4 inches on her. This wasn't training. This was theater. This was Hawkins making a point. Maya's legs felt like concrete as she forced herself forward. Every step toward that combat circle felt like walking toward an execution. She could feel dozens of eyes on her back, could practically hear the thoughts running through her fellow Marines' heads. Poor Santos. Hawkins is really going to embarrass her this time. Why doesn't she just quit? She stopped in front of Hawkins and snapped to attention, refusing to let her voice shake. Private First Class Santos, reporting as ordered, Gunnery Sergeant. Hawkins circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey. "Santos, you've been vocal about your desire for equal treatment, equal opportunity. Well, today's your lucky day. In real combat, the enemy doesn't care about your height or your gender. They're going to come at you with everything they've got." He gestured toward Miller. "Corporal Miller here is going to demonstrate that reality. You're going to defend yourself. When you can't anymore, tap out. Clear." "Crystal clear, Gunnery Sergeant," Maya said, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. She knew what this was. She knew exactly what this was. But she also knew that refusing would be worse. It would confirm everything they already thought about her. Miller looked uncomfortable as he stepped into the makeshift ring, a 20-foot circle marked with rope on the dusty ground. "Santos, look, Just do what you're ordered to do, Corporal," Maya interrupted, her tone flat. She wasn't angry at Miller. He was just following orders, just another piece in Hawkins's game. Her anger was reserved for the man with the clipboard and the satisfied smirk. The afternoon sun seemed to intensify as Maya and Miller faced each other across the circle. Maya's martial arts instructor back in San Diego, before she'd enlisted, used to say that size was an illusion, that leverage and technique could overcome brute strength. But Master Chun had been teaching in a climate-controlled dojo with padded floors and willing students. This was different. This was designed to break her. "Begin!" Hawkins's voice cracked like a whip. Miller came at her cautiously, his hands up in a defensive stance. He wasn't trying to hurt her, that much was clear, but he was following orders. His first jab was telegraphed, easy to dodge, but Maya knew it was just testing. The second came faster. She slipped it, but barely. Miller was being gentle by his standards, but gentle for a man his size still meant dangerous for someone hers. Maya's mind raced. She couldn't win this with strength. She couldn't outlast him. The afternoon heat was already sapping her energy, and Miller looked like he could go for hours. She needed to be smart. She needed to be perfect. She needed... Miller's foot swept toward her legs, and Maya jumped back, her boots skidding in the dust. The watching Marines were silent now, the expected quick victory taking longer than anticipated. Maya could see frustration beginning to creep into Miller's movements. Hawkins wanted to show, and Maya was making his volunteer look bad. "Come on, Miller. She's 130 pounds. Are you going to dance with her all day?" Hawkins's voice dripped with scorn. Miller's face flushed red. Maya knew what was coming. She could see it in the set of his shoulders, the shift in his stance. He was about to stop being gentle. His next punch came with real force behind it, and Maya barely managed to deflect it, the impact reverberating up her arm. Another punch, this one toward her ribs. She twisted, taking it on the shoulder instead, pain exploding through her upper body. The crowd was murmuring now. Some were uncomfortable, sensing that this had crossed a line. Others were excited by the violence, the spectacle. Maya's vision tunneled, focusing solely on Miller, on the patterns of his movements, on the tiny details that preceded each strike. Her instructor's voice echoed in her memory. Size doesn't matter if they can't hit you. Speed doesn't matter if you're not there. Everything is about timing, Maya. Everything. Miller lunged forward with another combination, putting his weight into it. Maya saw her opening, not to win exactly, but survive with some dignity intact. She sidestepped his punch, using his momentum against him, and delivered a sharp kick to the back of his knee. Miller stumbled, but didn't fall. He was too well-trained, too experienced. He recovered quickly, angry now, his professional pride wounded. "Enough!" Hawkins's voice stopped them both. "Santos, you've proven you can run away effectively. Very tactical. Very impressive." His sarcasm was thick enough to cut. "Let's see how you do against a real challenge." Maya's heart sank. It wasn't over. Of course it wasn't over. Hawkins hadn't gotten the result he wanted yet. The complete humiliation, the broken will, the resignation he could point to as proof that women didn't belong in combat roles. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, front and center. The assembled Marines parted like the Red Sea as Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez walked forward. Maya had seen Rodriguez around camp, but never up close. Now, standing in the circle across from her, he seemed impossibly large. At 7 feet tall and somewhere north of 250 pounds of pure muscle, Rodriguez looked like he'd been carved from granite by a sculptor who specialized in intimidation. His dark eyes were expressionless as he looked down at Maya for what seemed like an impossible height. "Rodriguez, show Private Santos what real combat looks like," Hawkins ordered, his satisfaction evident in every word. Rodriguez said nothing. He simply nodded once and took his position in the circle. Maya felt like she was going to be sick. Her shoulder throbbed from Miller's punch. Her legs were shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. And now she was supposed to fight someone who looked like he ate people like her for breakfast. The sun seemed to pulse overhead, making everything feel surreal, dreamlike, like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. "Begin!" Rodriguez moved forward with surprising speed for someone his size. Maya backpedaled, her mind frantically searching for options, for strategies, for anything that might. His hand shot out, grabbing for her. Maya twisted away, but she wasn't quite fast enough. His fingers caught her shoulder, spinning her around. The world tilted. She hit the ground hard, dust exploding around her, the impact driving the air from her lungs. Above her, Rodriguez's massive form blocked out the sun. This was it. This was the moment Hawkins had been engineering since he'd called her name. This was where she was supposed to tap out, to admit defeat, to prove that she didn't belong. Maya could practically see the satisfied smile on Hawkins's face without even looking at him. But as Maya lay there in the dust, gasping for air, something shifted inside her. Maybe it was the rage that had been building for months, years. Really, if she was honest, maybe it was pure stubbornness. Maybe it was a memory of every dismissive comment, every condescending smile, every door closed in her face. Whatever it was, it burned through her exhaustion and fear like fire through paper. Rodriguez extended his hand to help her up, a gesture of sportsmanship that Hawkins probably hated. Maya took it, letting him pull her to her feet. As she stood, dusting herself off, she looked up at the giant Marine, really looked at him, and in that moment, she realized something crucial. Rodriguez didn't want to be here either. This wasn't his choice. He was as much a pawn in Hawkins's game as she was. Ready for round 2, Santos? Or are you ready to tap out? Hawkins's voice was eager, anticipating victory. Maya spit dust from her mouth and set her stance. Ready, Gunnery Sergeant. The watching Marines seemed to collectively hold their breath. Even Wu looked worried now, her face tight with concern. Maya could see in their eyes what they expected. Another takedown, maybe worse this time. A broken bone, a concussion, a medical discharge, and a cautionary tale about knowing your limitations. But Maya wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about timing, about leverage, about the fact that bigger opponents had bigger blind spots, slower reaction times to close-range attacks. She was thinking about how Rodriguez had moved, the patterns in his approach, the split second of hesitation before he grabbed her, like he was pulling his punches, trying not to actually hurt her. Rodriguez advanced again, his movements controlled and professional. But Maya wasn't running this time. She was waiting, watching, calculating. Master Chen's voice echoed in her head. The bigger they are, Maya, the harder they fall, but only if you can find the right angle. Everything is about angles and timing. Rodriguez reached for her again, and Maya moved. But this time, instead of retreating, she stepped inside his reach, turning his size from an advantage into a liability. Her elbow drove up into his solar plexus. Not with enough force to really hurt him, but enough to make him react, to make him bend forward slightly. In that split second, Maya planted her foot behind his ankle and used every ounce of her body weight, every bit of leverage she could muster, to push and pull simultaneously. Physics did the rest. Rodriguez's eyes widened in surprise as his balance shifted. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the 7-foot Marine teetered, his arms windmilling. Then, with a crash that seemed to shake the entire training ground, he went down hard, landing flat on his back in a cloud of dust. The watching Marines erupted in gasps and shouts. Maya stood over Rodriguez, her chest heaving, unable to quite believe what had just happened. Rodriguez stared up at her, equally shocked, before his face split into something that might have been a grin. Santos, help him. Hawkins started, but Maya was already extending her hand, mirroring the gesture Rodriguez had made for her moments before. The big Marine took it, letting her help pull him to his feet, or at least assist in the gesture, since they both knew she couldn't actually lift his weight. Nice move, Rodriguez said quietly, so only she could hear. There was respect in his voice, genuine respect, and it meant more to Maya than any commendation ever could. Thank you, Staff Sergeant, Maya replied, equally quiet. Hawkins looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. The demonstration hadn't gone the way he'd planned. At all. But he was a Marine Gunnery Sergeant, which many knew how to recover from unexpected situations. Santos, you got lucky. One takedown doesn't mean. Permission to speak, Gunnery Sergeant? Maya interrupted, surprised at her own audacity. Hawkins's jaw clenched. Granted. You said real combat doesn't care about size or gender. You were right. It cares about skill, technique, and determination. I respectfully request the opportunity to demonstrate that further. Maya's voice was steady now, All traces of fear burned away by adrenaline and anger, and something else. Something like hope. The training ground had gone completely silent. This wasn't the script. This wasn't how these things were supposed to go. The murmurs started again, louder this time. Excited. Even Wu was grinning now, despite trying to maintain military bearing. Hawkins looked at Maya, then at Rodriguez, then back at Maya. She could see the calculation in his eyes. If he said no, he'd look like he was protecting Rodriguez. Or worse, like he was afraid of what might happen if they went again. If he said yes and Maya got hurt, he'd have plausible deniability. If he said yes and Maya somehow won, one more round, Hawkins said finally, 3 minutes, best of 3 falls. Rodriguez, show her what real combat looks like. Rodriguez nodded, but when he looked at Maya, there was something new in his expression. Wariness, respect, the understanding that he'd underestimated her once and wouldn't make that mistake again. As they took their positions for the final round, Maya felt the weight of every eye on the training ground. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every woman who'd been told she wasn't strong enough, wasn't fast enough, wasn't good enough. It was about proving that courage and skill couldn't be measured by height or weight. It was about showing Hawkins and everyone like him that they were wrong. The sun beat down. The dust waited. And Maya Santos set her stance, ready for whatever came next. The 3-minute countdown began with a shrill whistle that cut through the afternoon heat like a knife. Maya's entire body thrummed with adrenaline, her senses sharpened to a razor's edge. Across from her, Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez had shifted into a different stance, more guarded, more professional. The friendly giant who'd helped her up a moment ago had been replaced by a combat veteran with years of training and experience. Maya had surprised him once. He wasn't going to let it happen again. The circle of Marines had grown tighter, more invested. Word spread to the training ground like wildfire, and Maya could see additional soldiers jogging over from other areas, drawn by the commotion. Among them, she spotted Lieutenant Sarah Chun, one of the few female officers on base. Her face carefully neutral, but her eyes sharp and assessing. Maya felt the pressure of those watching eyes like a physical weight. Rodriguez moved first, but this time with calculated precision. No wild grabs, no overconfidence. He circled slowly, keeping his center of gravity low despite his height, his hands up in a boxer's stance that spoke of formal training beyond basic Marine Corps combatives. Maya mirrored his movement, acutely aware that she'd use up her element of surprise. Whatever happened next would require every scrap of skill and determination she possessed. 2 minutes, 50 seconds, someone called out. Time was already slipping away. Rodriguez feinted left, then came in fast on the right. Maya barely managed to slip the initial strike, feeling the wind from his fist as it passed inches from her face. She tried to counter a low kick to his lead leg, but Rodriguez checked it easily, his shin like hitting a tree trunk. The impact sent a jolt of pain up Maya's leg, and she had to skip backward to avoid his immediate follow-up. He's playing with her now. Maya heard someone mutter, just waiting for her to make a mistake. The bastard was probably right. Rodriguez wasn't pressing his advantage aggressively because he didn't need to. Time was on his side. He was bigger, stronger, and had better endurance. All he had to do was wait for Maya to tire, to make an error in judgment, to give him an opening. It was smart strategy, the kind that won fights and kept you alive in actual combat. But Maya hadn't survived 3 years in the Marine Corps, hadn't endured countless moments of dismissal and condescension, hadn't pushed through every obstacle placed in her path, just to lose to smart strategy. She needed to change the equation, to turn Rodriguez's advantages into liabilities. Master Chen's dojo in San Diego seemed impossibly far away now, but his lessons echoed in Maya's mind with perfect clarity. She'd started training with him when she was 15, an angry teenager looking for an outlet. He'd taught her that martial arts wasn't about muscle. It was about leverage, timing, and psychology. The mind gives up before the body, he used to say. Control your mind and you control the fight. Rodriguez came in again, throwing a combination that forced Maya to backpedal. Her heel caught on a raised edge of the rope marking the circle, and she stumbled. Rodriguez pressed the advantage, moving in fast. This was it. Exactly what he'd been waiting for. Maya saw his hand reaching out to grapple, to use his size advantage to pin her to ground where the fight would effectively be over. But Maya's stumble had been entirely accidental. In that split second, as Rodriguez committed his attack, Maya dropped her weight even lower and drove forward instead of away. She hit Rodriguez just above the knees with her shoulder, her legs pumping like pistons, using his own momentum against him. It was a move straight out of wrestling, adapted for the geometry of their size difference. Rodriguez's knee buckled. Not a fall, not yet, but a clear break in his balance. Maya felt it and pressed, hooking her arm behind his other leg and pulling while driving with her shoulder. For a heart-stopping moment, Rodriguez teetered on the edge of collapse. The watching Marines roared, some in excitement, others in disbelief. But Rodriguez was too experienced, too well-trained. He shifted his weight at the last possible second, turning his near fall into a controlled drop. He hit the ground on his side instead of his back, and as Maya tried to capitalize on her advantage, his massive hand shot out and grabbed her ankle. One pull, and Maya was on the ground too, dust flying up around them both. They scrambled apart, both breathing hard now. Maya's shoulder ached where she'd hit Rodriguez, and her ankle throbbed where he grabbed it. But she'd held her own, more than held her own. The smirk had long since disappeared from Gunnery Sergeant Hawkins's face. 2 minutes, the timekeeper called. Maya and Rodriguez circled each other again, both reassessing. The playbook had been thrown out. This was no longer a demonstration or a lesson. This had become a real fight, and both of them knew it. Maya could see a new wariness in Rodriguez's eyes, a respect that hadn't been there before. He was no longer trying to manage her. He was trying to beat her. Santos. Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through the noise of the crowd. Maya's eyes flicked toward her for just a fraction of a second. Chun gave the smallest nod, acknowledgement, encouragement, solidarity. Then Maya's attention snapped back to Rodriguez, who'd used that momentary distraction to close distance. His fist came in fast, aimed at her midsection. Maya twisted, taking the blow on her side instead of square on. Pain exploded through her ribs, driving the air from her lungs. She gasped, fighting to breathe, fighting not to double over. Rodriguez followed up immediately, not giving her time to recover. Another strike. This one tore her head. Maya ducked, but not quite low enough. Rodriguez's forearm caught the side of her skull, and stars exploded across her vision. The crowd noise changed pitch, concern now, not excitement. Maya's knees wanted to buckle. Her head rang like a bell. Every instinct screamed at her to tap out, to end this before she got seriously hurt. She could feel Hawkins' satisfaction radiating across the circle like heat from a fire. This was what he'd wanted all along. This was the breaking point. But Maya didn't break. Instead, she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. As Rodriguez moved in to finish it, expecting her to retreat or collapse, Maya exploded forward. Not with technique, not with strategy, but with pure, desperate aggression. She drove her forehead into Rodriguez's chest, her fists hammering at his sides, her knees coming up toward his thighs. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't martial arts. It was a street fight, raw and ugly and real. Rodriguez, caught off guard by the sudden reversal, backpedaled. His heel hit the rope marking the circle's edge, and for a second time, his balance shifted. But this time, Maya was already inside his reach, already disrupting his center of gravity. She hooked her leg behind his, the same move that had worked before, but from a different angle with different leverage. Rodriguez went down, hard. His back hit the ground with sound like thunder, and the air exploded from his lungs in a surprised grunt. Maya landed on top of him, her forearm across his throat. Not enough to choke, but enough to pin. For 3 seconds, it felt like 3 hours, they stayed frozen like that, both breathing hard, both covered in dust and sweat. Fall! The referee called Corporal Jackson, who'd been designated to officiate. Santos. The crowd erupted. Maya rolled off Rodriguez, every muscle in her body screaming. She lay on her back in the dust, staring up at the impossibly blue California sky, unable to quite process what had just happened. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. 1 fall each now. One more, and on your feet, Santos. Hawkins's voice cracked like a whip. "Fight's not over." Maya pushed herself up, her arms shaking. Rodriguez was already standing, and he extended his hand once again to help her. This time, when Maya took it, she saw something different in his eyes. Not pity, not condescension, but genuine warrior-to-warrior respect. "You're tougher than you look, Santos," Rodriguez said quietly, his voice carrying a warmth that made Maya's eyes sting. "You're exactly as tough as you look, Staff Sergeant," Maya replied, managing a slight smile despite the pain radiating through her body. 1 minute, the timekeeper shouted. 1 minute to determine everything. 1 minute that would define how every Marine on this base, how every Marine Maya met for the rest of her career, saw her. 1 minute to prove that she belonged, or 1 minute to confirm every doubt, every stereotype, every reason they'd given for why women shouldn't be in combat roles. Maya and Rodriguez faced each other across the circle one more time. The crowd had grown to nearly 100 Marines now, their voices creating a wall of sound that seemed to press in from all sides. Maya could see Corporal Wu in the front row, her face tight with anxiety. She could see Lieutenant Chun, standing ramrod straight, her expression carefully neutral but her fingers crossed at her side. She could see Gunnery Sergeant Hawkins, his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. And she could see Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, 7 feet of Marine Corps warrior, looking at her with an expression she'd never expected to see directed at her on a training ground. Respect tinged with wariness. He knew what she knew, that this final minute would push both of them to their absolute limits. The whistle blew. Rodriguez came forward immediately. No more circling. No more testing. He was done playing it safe. His first strike was a straight punch that Maya barely slipped. His second came right behind it, a hook that she had to duck under. He was pressing now, using his reach advantage to keep her defensive, not letting her set up for any of the leverage plays that had worked before. Maya backpedaled, her boots slipping in the loose dust. Her lungs burned. Her ribs ached where Rodriguez had landed that earlier shot. Her head still rang from a forearm strike. But her mind was clear, crystalline clear in a way that only came in moments of absolute crisis. Rodriguez threw a low kick, testing her reaction. Maya checked it, but the impact sent a spike of pain through her already aching shin. He was systematically breaking her down, professional and methodical. Another punch, another kick. Maya was running out of room, running out of options. The rope marking the circle's edge was right behind her heels. 30 seconds, half a minute. That was all that stood between Maya and whatever came next. She could see the calculation in Rodriguez's eyes. He was going to rush her, use his size to simply overwhelm her defenses and pin her outside the circle or against the ground. It was a smart play, the percentage play. Maya made a decision. It wasn't calculated or strategic. It was instinctive, born from 3 years of being underestimated and 3 months of being dismissed. As Rodriguez gathered himself for his final rush, Maya did something completely unexpected. She dropped flat on her back. The watching Marines gasped. Hawkins actually laughed, a short, barking sound of triumph. "She's done. She's—" But Maya wasn't done. As Rodriguez hesitated, confused by her sudden drop, Maya's leg shot up and out, catching Rodriguez just above the ankles in a scissor sweep. It was a judo move, rarely used in Marine Corps combatives because it required perfect timing and left you vulnerable if you missed. Maya didn't miss. Rodriguez's feet flew out from under him. His massive frame went horizontal, hanging in the air for a split second that seemed to stretch into eternity. Then gravity reasserted itself, and all 7 feet and 250-plus pounds of Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez crashed to the ground beside Maya with earth-shaking force. For a moment, everything was silent. Even the crowd seemed to have collectively held its breath. Maya and Rodriguez lay side by side in the dust, both flat on their backs, both gasping for air, both covered in dirt and sweat and the accumulated bruises of combat. Then the referee's voice cut through the silence. "Fall. Santos. Match." The crowd exploded. Marines were shouting, some in celebration, others in disbelief. Maya lay there, unable to move, unable to process what had just happened. She'd won. Against all odds, against every expectation, against a Marine who outweighed her by more than 100 pounds and stood over 2 feet taller. She had won. Hands reached down to help her up. Corporal Wu, her face split in an enormous grin, and Lieutenant Chun, her professional composure cracked by a smile of genuine pride. Maya let them pull her to her feet, her legs shaking so badly she could barely stand. Across the circle, other Marines were helping Rodriguez up, the big man shaking his head in apparent disbelief. The crowd of Marines parted as Rodriguez walked across the circle. For a moment, Maya thought he might be angry, might feel that his pride had been wounded. But when he stopped in front of her, his hand extended for what had to be the 10th handshake of the fight, his face held nothing but respect. "Hell of a fight, Santos," Rodriguez said, his voice carrying clearly in the suddenly quiet training ground. "Hell of a fight. Thank you, Staff Sergeant," Maya managed to say, her voice rough from exertion and dust. "You taught me a lot." "I think it might have been the other way around," Rodriguez replied with a slight smile. Then, louder, so that everyone could hear, "This Marine right here, she's got heart. More heart than size, and that's what counts." The applause that followed was genuine, enthusiastic, nothing held back. Even some of the Marines who'd been snickering earlier were clapping, caught up in the unexpected drama of what they'd witnessed. Maya felt tears prickling at her eyes and forced them back. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. Not in front of Gunnery Sergeant Hawkins, who stood at the edge of the circle with an expression like he'd just bitten into something rotten. "All right, show's over," Hawkins barked, his voice cutting through the celebration. "Back to your training stations. We've got work to do." The crowd began to disperse, but slowly, reluctantly. Marines kept looking back at Maya, their expressions ranging from respect to curiosity to, in some cases, something that might have been admiration. Lieutenant Chun approached as the crowd thinned, her professional mask back in place, but her eyes warm. "Santos, report to medical." "That's an order. Get yourself checked out." "Yes, ma'am," Maya said, snapping to attention despite her exhaustion. "And Santos," Chin added quietly, so only Maya could hear, "outstanding work. That's how it's done." As Maya limped toward the medical station, accompanied by Wu, who'd appointed herself as escort, she heard Hawkins barking orders at Rodriguez. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear, angry, frustrated, disappointed. She felt a flash of guilt. Rodriguez would probably face consequences for losing to her, for making Hawkins look bad, for disrupting the lesson that was supposed to have been taught. "Don't even think about it," Wu said, reading her expression. "Rodriguez is a big boy. He can handle Hawkins. You just won the fight of your life. Santos, enjoy it for a minute." Maya nodded, but the guilt lingered. This wasn't over. She'd won a battle, but the war, the daily struggle for respect, for equality, for the right to serve on the same terms as her male counterparts, that war continued. If anything, she'd just painted a target on her back. Hawkins wouldn't forget this. Neither would the Marines who'd seen their assumptions challenged and their biases confronted. The medical station was a small building at the edge of the training ground, staffed by a Navy corpsman named Peterson, who'd seen everything and was impressed by nothing. He took one look at Maya and shook his head. "Let me guess. Hawkins's little demonstration." "Something like that," Maya admitted. Peterson's examination was thorough and professional. Bruised ribs, not broken. Mild concussion from a forearm strike. Nothing serious, but she'd need to be monitored. Various contusions and abrasions that would hurt like hell tomorrow, but weren't concerning. Overall assessment, she'd gotten off lucky. "You should see the other guy," Wu joked as Peterson wrapped Maya's ribs. "I did see the other guy," Peterson replied dryly. "He was here 10 minutes ago. You both look like you went 12 rounds with a freight train. What possessed you to take on Rodriguez? That man is a walking tank." "Didn't have much choice in the matter," Maya said. Peterson paused in his rapping, his expression softening slightly. "Yeah, I heard about that. Heard you won too. Hell of a thing." He finished securing the wrap and stepped back. "You're clear for light duty. No heavy lifting, no strenuous exercise for 48 hours. And Santos? Be careful. You've made yourself visible today. Visibility isn't always a good thing in the military. Maya nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Success attracted attention, and attention attracted scrutiny. There would be people who want to take her down a peg, to prove that her victory was a fluke, that she'd just gotten lucky. The real test wouldn't be in the next week, or even the next month. It would be in a sustained daily effort to prove that she belonged, fight after fight after fight. As Maya and Wu left the medical station, the California sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The training ground was mostly empty now, the other Marines having moved on to their scheduled activities. But standing near the obstacle course, apparently waiting, was Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. He approached as they neared, and Wu discreetly stepped away to give them space. Up close, Maya could see that Rodriguez was moving a bit stiffly himself. She'd clearly done more damage than she'd realized in the heat of combat. "Santos," Rodriguez said. "Got a minute?" "Of course, Staff Sergeant." Rodriguez glanced around, making sure they weren't overheard, then spoke in a voice that was quiet but intense. "What happened out there today? That doesn't happen. Marines your size don't take down Marines my size. The odds were maybe 1 in 100, maybe 1 in 1,000. You understand what that means." Maya wasn't sure where this was going. That I got lucky? No. Rodriguez's voice was firm. That you got something special. Something that can't be taught in basic training or learned from a manual. You've got instinct, adaptability, and heart. Don't let anyone, not Hawkins, not anyone, make you forget that. He paused and added, "But also understand that you painted a target on yourself. There are going to be people who want to prove that today was a fluke. You're going to have to keep proving yourself over and over. It's not fair, but it's reality." "I know," Maya said quietly. "Good." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "One more thing. That move at the end. The leg sweep from your back? That was brilliant. Risky as hell, but brilliant. Where'd you learn that?" "Judo instructor back in San Diego. He used to say that being smaller meant you had to be smarter. Smart instructor." Rodriguez extended his hand one final time. "It was an honor fighting you, Santos. No joke, no patronizing. You earned every bit of that win." They shook hands, and Maya felt something shift in her chest. Respect. Real, genuine respect from a fellow warrior. It was what she'd been fighting for all along, and it felt better than she'd imagined. As Rodriguez walked away, Wu rejoined Maya, her expression thoughtful. "You know what you've done, right? You've changed things. Maybe not everything, maybe not overnight, but you've changed something. Every female Marine on this base, hell, in the whole Corps, just got a little bit of wind in their sails." Maya looked out across the training ground, toward the barracks, where she'd spent 3 months feeling like an outsider, like someone who didn't quite belong. Maybe that would change now. Maybe not. But for the first time since arriving at Camp Pendleton, Maya felt like she'd made a dent in the wall of skepticism and prejudice that surrounded her. "Come on," Wu said, linking her arm through Maya's good arm. "We're going to mess hall, and you're going to tell me every single detail of that fight, while we eat whatever mystery meat they're serving tonight. And then you're going to rest, because tomorrow the real work begins." Maya nodded, allowing herself to be led away. Wu was right. Today had been a battle. Tomorrow will be the start of the real war, the long, grinding campaign to prove that today wasn't a fluke, that she deserved to wear the uniform, that she belonged. But tonight, just for tonight, Maya allowed herself to savor the victory. It tasted like dust and sweat and blood, and it was the sweetest thing she'd ever known. The bruises bloomed overnight like dark flowers across Maya's torso. When she woke at 0500 for reveille, every muscle in her body screamed in protest. The 48 hours of light duty that Corpsman Peterson had prescribed felt like both a blessing and a curse. Her body needed a recovery time, but the enforced rest meant she'd have nothing to do but think about what came next. The morning sun filtered through the barracks windows as Maya dressed slowly, each movement deliberate and careful. Around her, other female Marines were beginning their day with the usual routine of making racks and preparing for formation. But this morning felt different. The conversations were quieter, and Maya caught more than one glance directed her way. Some looks held admiration. Others were harder to read. Perhaps resentment. Perhaps fear that Maya's actions would somehow make life harder for all of them. Santos. The voice belonged to Staff Sergeant Patricia Morrison, the senior enlisted woman in the barracks. Morrison was career corps, 20 years in, with a face like weathered leather and eyes that missed nothing. She approached Maya with her characteristic no-nonsense stride. "Word is you put on quite a show yesterday." "Just following orders, Staff Sergeant," Maya replied carefully, standing at attention despite the pain in her ribs. Morrison studied her for a long moment. "I've been in this corps for 2 decades, Santos. I've seen progress. Slow, painful progress. Women in combat roles, integration of training, policy changes. You know what else I've seen? Spectacular failures that set that progress back years. Individual Marines who couldn't handle the pressure, who cracked under scrutiny, who proved the skeptics right." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Don't be one of those Marines." "I won't, Staff Sergeant." "See that you don't, because now every eye is on you. You're not just representing yourself anymore. Whether you like it or not, you're carrying the weight of every woman who's ever worn this uniform." Morrison's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, you did good work yesterday. Rodriguez is a solid Marine, and you earned his respect. That matters. But don't let it go to your head." After Morrison left, Corporal will materialize at Maya's side like a friendly ghost. "Morning, champ. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Maya admitted. "You kinda did. A truck named Rodriguez." Wu grinned, then lowered her voice. "Fair warning, you're the talk of the base. Everyone wants to know about the fight. Some people are thrilled. Others, not so much. Hawkins has been in a mood, according to Jackson, and there's a rumor that Colonel Barrett wants to see you." Maya's stomach dropped. Colonel James Barrett was a commanding officer of their entire battalion. If he wanted to see her, it could mean anything from a commendation to a reprimand. With Hawkins's influence, Maya wouldn't bet on which direction it would go. The morning formation was torture, standing at attention with bruised ribs for 30 minutes, while various officers droned through announcements, felt like its own special kind of punishment. But Maya endured it, keeping her face impassive, refusing to show weakness. She could feel eyes on her, dozens of them from every direction. The story had spread faster than wildfire, and now she was no longer just PFC Santos. She was the Marine who took down Rodriguez. After formation, as the assembled Marines broke apart to head to their various duty stations, a Lance Corporal Maya didn't recognize approached. "Santos? Colonel Barrett wants to see you in his office at 0900. Don't be late." The next hour and a half felt like an eternity. Maya tried to occupy herself with busy work, organizing her locker, writing an email to her mother back in Texas, carefully omitting any mention of yesterday's events, reviewing training manuals she'd already memorized. Nothing worked. Her mind kept circling back to that meeting with Colonel Barrett, playing out scenario after scenario, each one worse than the last. At 0845, Maya left the barracks and began to walk to the battalion headquarters. Camp Pendleton was stirring to full life now, with Marines moving between buildings, vehicles rumbling past on the access roads, and the distant sound of gunfire from the rifle range. It was a perfect Southern California morning. Clear sky, gentle breeze, temperature in the comfortable range before the afternoon heat arrived. Maya barely noticed any of it. The battalion headquarters was an intimidating building, all clean lines and military efficiency. Maya announced herself to the sergeant at the front desk and was directed to wait. She sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, her hands folded in her lap, her back ramrod straight, despite the pain in her ribs. Other Marines came and went, some glancing at her curiously, others too wrapped up in their own concerns to notice. At precisely 0900, the door to Colonel Barrett's office opened. Gunnery Sergeant Hawkins emerged, his face a thundercloud of barely suppressed anger. He saw Maya and stopped, their eyes meeting for a brief moment. What passed between them in that glance was pure mutual understanding. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Private First Class Santos, A voice called from inside the office. "Enter." Maya stood, squared her shoulders, and walked through the door. Colonel Barrett's office was exactly what she'd expected. Sparse, functional, decorated only with unit citations and a photo of the colonel with his family. Barrett himself sat behind a government-issued desk, his posture relaxed but his gaze sharp. He was in his mid-40s, with close-cropped gray hair and the lean build of a marathon runner. Beside him stood Lieutenant Chun, her expression carefully neutral. "Private Santos, reporting as ordered, sir," Maya said, snapping to attention. "At ease, Santos." Barrett gestured to a chair. "Sit down. Those ribs are probably killing you." Maya sat cautiously, surprised by the informal tone. Barrett leaned back in his chair, studying her with a kind of intense focus that made her feel like he was reading her soul. "I've read your file," Barrett began. "Transfer from 29 Palms after filing harassment complaints. Good performance reviews from your previous CO, but noted personality conflicts with enlisted leadership. Expert marks on a rifle range. Exceptional scores in tactical exercises. Average to above average in everything else. Nothing in here that would suggest you could take down a Marine the size of Staff Sergeant Rodriguez in hand-to-hand combat." Maya said nothing. She hadn't been asked a question. Barrett continued. "So imagine my surprise when I get a call from Gunnery Sergeant Hawkins last night, informing me that one of my privates had just defeated one of my staff sergeants in a combatives demonstration. Hawkins was concerned. He seemed to think you'd gotten lucky, that the match was somehow unfair, that Rodriguez hadn't been taking it seriously." Maya's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice level. "Permission to speak, sir?" "Granted." "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez took the fight very seriously, sir. He's a professional and a skilled combatant. I was fortunate to find opportunities to use leverage and timing to my advantage, but there was nothing unfair about the match." Hawkins seemed to think otherwise. He also seemed to think that putting you in that situation in the first place was a necessary lesson about understanding one's limitations. Barrett's tone was carefully neutral, giving nothing away about his own opinion. Lieutenant Chin spoke up for the first time. "Sir, if I may, I observed the entire encounter. Private Santos was not a willing participant in the initial demonstration. She was selected specifically, and the setup appeared designed to highlight physical disadvantages rather than to teach meaningful combative skills." Barrett nodded slowly. "That was my assessment as well, Lieutenant." He turned his attention back to Maya. "Santos, I'm going to be direct with you. What happened yesterday has put me in a difficult position. On one hand, you demonstrated exceptional skill, determination, and courage. Those are qualities we value in the Marine Corps. On the other hand, you've made waves. Hawkins is a senior NCO with a lot of influence. There are Marines in this battalion who share his, let's call them, traditional views about women in combat roles." Maya felt her heart sinking. This was the part where Barrett explained that she'd have to transfer again, that she was too much trouble, that it would be better for everyone if she just quietly moved somewhere else. "However," Barrett continued, and Maya's attention snapped back to him, "I didn't spend 30 years in this Corps to watch talented Marines get pushed out because they threatened someone's ego. You won that fight fair and square, Santos. Rodriguez confirmed it himself when I spoke with him this morning. He said, and I quote, 'She outfought me.' Simple as that. That means something." Maya felt a flutter of hope in her chest. Cautious and fragile, Barrett leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back to your normal duties after your light duty period expires. You're going to continue to perform at the high level I see in your file. And you're going to deal with the fact that a lot of people are going to be watching you, waiting for you to fail. Some will want to see you succeed. Others will be actively rooting against you. That's the price of visibility. I understand, sir. I'm not sure you do, but you will." Barrett glanced at Lieutenant Chun, then back to Maya. "The Marine Corps is changing, Santos. Slowly, sometimes painfully, but it is changing. We need Marines like you. Marines who can walk the walk, who can back up our claims about equality and capability with actual performance. But change is hard, and it creates friction. You just created a lot of friction." "I didn't ask for that fight, sir." "No, you didn't. But you won it, and now you have to live with the consequences. Barrett stood, and Maya immediately came to attention. One more thing, Santos. Rodriguez asked me to pass along a message. He said you've got natural talent for combatives, and if you're interested, he runs an informal training group 3 evenings a week. He'd like you to join. Maya couldn't hide her surprise. Sir, Rodriguez is a lot of things, but he's not petty. He recognizes skill when he sees it, even when that skill beats him. Especially when that skill beats him. Think about it. Barrett moved toward the door, signaling the meeting was over. Dismiss, Private. And Santos? Don't make me regret backing you. I won't, sir. Thank you, sir. Maya left the office feeling like she'd just run an emotional marathon. Lieutenant Chun followed her out, waiting until they were well clear of the headquarters building before speaking. You handle that well, Chun said. Barrett a fair man, but he's also political. He stuck his neck out for you in there. Don't forget that. I won't, ma'am. Chun stopped walking and turned to face Maya directly. I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me. What you did yesterday was extraordinary, but it's also going to make your life harder. Much harder. There are people on this base who see your success as a threat to their worldview. Some of them will try to make you fail. Others will try to isolate you, to make you so miserable that you quit on your own. She paused, her expression intense. Don't let them. We need Marines like you. I need Marines like you. Thank you, ma'am. That means a lot. One more thing. Chen's voice dropped lower. Hawkins is going to retaliate. Maybe not immediately, maybe not obviously, but it's coming. He lost face yesterday, and men like him don't forget that. Watch your back. As Chen walked away, Maya stood alone in the California sunshine, processing everything that had happened in the last 18 hours. She'd won a fight, gained respect from some quarters, and painted a target on her back and others. Colonel Barrett was cautiously supportive, but that support came with expectations. Lieutenant Chun was an ally, but one who was realistic about the challenges ahead. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Maya returned to the barracks, where she found herself suddenly popular in a way that felt both gratifying and uncomfortable. Marines she'd never spoken to wanted to hear about the fight, to offer congratulations, to share their own stories of dealing with difficult superiors. It was overwhelming. That evening, after chow, Maya found herself walking toward the gym where Rodriguez ran his combatives training sessions. She wasn't sure what drew her there. Curiosity, perhaps, or a desire to prove that yesterday hadn't been a fluke. The gym was a weathered building on the edge of the training area, its parking lot half full of personal vehicles. Inside, the space had been cleared of most equipment, leaving a large open area with mats covering the floor. About 20 Marines were present, most already in workout gear, stretching or practicing techniques in pairs. They all stopped and turned when Maya entered, and the silence was sudden and absolute. Rodriguez stood at the center of the space, directing 2 Marines through a grappling sequence. He looked up when the room went quiet, his eyes landing on Maya. For a moment that stretched uncomfortably long, nobody moved or spoke. Then Rodriguez smiled, a genuine smile, warm and welcoming. Santos, glad you could make it. Find a spot and warm up. We're starting with ground fighting tonight. The tension in the room broke, like a snapped wire. Marines returned to their activities, though Maya caught plenty of curious glances. She found an empty section of mat and began stretching, acutely aware of her bruised ribs protesting every movement. Corporal will appear beside her, already in workout clothes. Thought you might show up, Wu said with a grin. I've been coming here for a few weeks. Rodriguez really knows his stuff. The training session was intense, but manageable. Rodriguez focused on technique, rather than brute force, demonstrating principles of leverage and positioning that felt familiar from Maya's judo training. He was a gifted instructor, patient and thorough, breaking down complex movements into understandable components. Halfway through the session, Rodriguez called Maya to the center of the mat. Every eye in the gym focused on him instantly, the room going silent once again. Maya felt her pulse quicken. Was this another test? Another demonstration? Santos, you used a leg sweep yesterday that was pretty slick, Rodriguez said conversationally. Mind showing to the group? I think everyone could learn from it. It wasn't a test. It was an opportunity. Rodriguez was publicly acknowledging her skill, validating her place in this space. Maya demonstrated the technique slowly, explaining the timing and leverage points while Rodriguez acted as her partner. He added his own insights, turning it into a genuine teaching moment rather than a showcase. After she finished, Rodriguez addressed the group. This is what I'm always talking about. Size matters, but technique and timing matter more. Santos here is living proof. She's about half my size, but yesterday she made me look like an amateur because she understood the principles better than I did in that moment. The Marines murmured approvingly, and Maya felt something shift in the room. Acceptance, recognition, a sense that maybe, just maybe, she'd found a place where she could belong. The session ended an hour later, with Marines pairing off for final rounds of sparring. Maya partnered with Wu, working through techniques at a controlled pace that wouldn't aggravate her injuries. As they worked, Wu leaned in close. "You're going to be okay, you know," Wu said quietly. "This thing with Rodriguez, the training group, Barrett backing you. You're building a network. People who respect you, who'll have your back. That's how you survive in the Corps." Maya nodded, understanding the truth in Wu's words. Yesterday's fight had been about proving herself in one moment. Today was about building something more lasting, relationships based on mutual respect, a reputation based on demonstrated skill, a foundation for the long career she hoped to have. As Maya left the gym that evening, her body aching but her spirits higher than they'd been in months, she passed a group of male Marines she didn't recognize. Their conversation stopped as she approached, and she heard one of them mutter something under his breath. The words weren't clear, but the contemptuous tone was unmistakable. Maya kept walking, her jaw tight. Chen's warning echoed in her mind. Hawkins is going to retaliate. The fight yesterday might have been won, but the war was far from over. There would be more challenges, more tests, more people determined to prove that her victory had been a fluke. But as Maya made her way back to the barracks under the darkening California sky, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Real, tangible hope that things might actually change, that she might actually make a difference. The road ahead would be hard. Chen had been right about that. But Maya Santos had never been afraid of hard work. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, she'd earned a small victory. Not in a combat circle, but in the minds of Marines who'd seen her not as a problem or a quota or an experiment, but as a fellow warrior. That was worth fighting for. And Maya was very, very good at fighting. 3 weeks after the fight, Maya Santos had settled into a new normal that was both exhilarating and exhausting. The bruises had faded, the aches had subsided, and she'd returned to full duty with a determination that bordered on obsessive. Every morning she was first up for physical training. Every task assigned to her was completed with meticulous precision. Every evaluation, every inspection, every moment of her military existence became an opportunity to prove that the fight with Rodriguez hadn't been luck. But proving yourself is exhausting work, and Maya was beginning to feel the strain. The sun was setting over Camp Pendleton as Maya finished her 3rd extra workout of the week. Rodriguez's combatives training sessions had become a regular part of her schedule, but she'd added additional time in the gym, working on strength training to compensate for her size disadvantage. The gym was nearly empty at this hour. Most Marines were at chow or relaxing the barracks, which was exactly how Maya preferred it. "You're going to burn yourself out." The voice came from the doorway. Lieutenant Chin stood there in PT gear, her expression concerned. "You've been here every night this week, Santos. Sometimes twice a day." Maya set down the weight she'd been using, breathing hard. "Just maintaining fitness, ma'am." Maintaining fitness is one thing. Whatever you're doing looks more like punishment. Jim walked into the gym, her footsteps echoing in the mostly empty space. "I've seen this before. Santos. Marines who prove themselves once, then spend every waking moment terrified they won't be able to do it again. It's not sustainable. With respect, ma'am, I know my limits." "Do you?" Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like someone who's forgotten that being a good Marine isn't about being perfect every second of every day. It's about consistent performance over time. reliability, endurance. You can't endure if you're running on empty. Maya wanted to argue, to insist that she was fine, that she could handle it. But the truth was that Chin was right. Maya had been pushing herself relentlessly since the fight, driven by a fear she couldn't quite name. Fear that people would realize the victory had been a fluke. Fear that she'd fail the next test. Fear that all the progress she'd made would evaporate like morning dew under scrutiny. "I don't know how to do this any other way," Maya admitted quietly. Chin nodded, as if she'd expected that answer. "Walk with me." They left the gym and began strolling along one of the paths that wound through the base. The evening air was cool and pleasant, a relief after the day's heat. In the distance, the lights of barracks and administrative buildings created a constellation against the darkening sky. "When I was a lieutenant fresh out of OCS," Chin began, "I thought I had to be twice as good as every male officer just to be considered half as competent. So I worked myself into the ground, volunteered for every assignment, stayed late every night, made myself available 24/7. You know what happened?" "What, ma'am?" "I burned out, had a complete breakdown 6 months in, ended up in counseling, nearly got med boarded out Corps. It was the worst period of my life." Chin paused, her voice heavy with the memory. "But it taught me something crucial. Excellence isn't about perfection. It's about sustainability. The Marine Corps doesn't need martyrs. It needs professionals who can perform consistently over a 20-year career." They walked in silence for a moment, Maya processing Chen's words. Around them, Camp Pendleton was settling into its evening rhythm. Marines heading to the PX, laughter drifting from the barracks, the distant sounds of training exercises winding down. "There's something else you need to know," Chin said, her tone shifting to something more serious. "Hawkins filed a formal complaint about the fight with Rodriguez. He's claiming that the match was unsupervised, that proper safety protocols weren't followed, that you were reckless and endangered Rodriguez." Maya stopped walking, her stomach dropping. "But that's not. He ordered the fight. He's the one who—" "I know. Colonel Barrett knows. Rodriguez knows. Everyone who was there knows. But Hawkins is playing a different game now." Chen's face was grim in the fading light. "He can't attack your performance. You've been exemplary. He can't question your dedication. You're in the gym more than anyone else. So he's going after the one thing he thinks he can use. The narrative that you're dangerous, that you don't follow proper protocols, that you're a liability. What does Colonel Barrett say?" "Barrett's fighting it, but Hawkins is allies in the NCO Corps. Senior enlisted who share his views about women in combat roles. They're pushing for a formal investigation, maybe even an Article 15. Chun resumed walking, her pace faster now, more agitated. "This is exactly what I warned you about. Hawkins can't beat you fairly, so he's changing the rules of the game." Maya felt rage building in her chest. Hot, righteous anger at the fundamental unfairness of it all. She'd followed orders. She'd fought when told to fight. She'd won fairly. And now she was being punished for it because her victory had embarrassed the wrong person. "What should I do?" Maya asked. "Keep your head down. Continue performing at a high level. Don't give them any ammunition." Chen's voice was firm but sympathetic. "And trust that Barrett and I are working on this. You're not alone in this fight, Santos." The next few days passed in a fog of anxiety. Maya continued her routine, PT, duty stations, combatives training, but the joy had gone out of it. Every interaction with Senior, enlisted felt fraught with danger. Every order seemed like it might be a trap. The paranoia was exhausting. On Thursday afternoon, Maya was called to report to Gunnery Sergeant Hawkins' office. Her heart hammered as she made the walk across base, Wu accompanying her as unofficial moral support until they reached the administrative building. "Whatever happens in there," Wu said quietly, "remember that you have people on your side. Don't let him bait you into saying something stupid." Maya nodded and entered the building alone. Hawkins's office was on the second floor, a small room that smelled of stale coffee and old paper. Hawkins sat behind his desk, his expression professionally neutral, but Maya could see the satisfaction lurking in his eyes. Private Santos, reporting as ordered Gunnery Sergeant. "At ease, Santos. Sit down." Hawkins gestured to a chair, and Maya sat, her posture rigid. I want to talk to you about your future in the Marine Corps. Here it comes, Maya thought. The ultimatum. The pressure to request a transfer. To drop the issue. To make the problem go away by removing herself from the equation. I've been reviewing your performance since you arrived at Camp Pendleton. Hawkins continued, his voice measured and calm. Your PT scores are excellent. Your weapons qualifications are outstanding. Your conduct has been, by all accounts, exemplary. He paused, letting those words hang in the air, which makes the situation with Staff Sergeant Rodriguez all the more regrettable. Gunnery Sergeant, Let me finish, Santos. Hawkins's voice hardened slightly. What happened during that combatives demonstration was unprecedented. It was also, in my professional opinion, dangerous. Hand-to-hand combat training requires supervision, proper safety measures, graduated intensity. What occurred that day was more like a street fight than a training exercise. Maya bit her tongue, forcing herself to stay silent. Wu's warning echoed in her head. Don't let him bait you. Now, I've filed my report on the incident. Hawkins continued. I've recommended a formal investigation into the safety protocols, or lack thereof, that were followed. I want to be clear, Santos, this isn't personal. This is about maintaining standards and ensuring that all Marines, regardless of gender, are held to the same expectations of professional conduct. The hypocrisy was staggering. Hawkins had orchestrated the entire situation, had specifically selected Maya and Rodriguez for that demonstration, had created the environment where the fight happened, and now he was using it as ammunition against her. Do you have anything to say, Private? Maya chose her words carefully. I followed the orders given to me, Gunnery Sergeant. I performed to the best of my ability in the situation I was placed in. I have nothing to apologize for. Something flickered in Hawkins's eyes, frustration maybe, or respect for Maya's refusal to be cowed. Very well. Dismissed. Maya stood, saluted, and left the office, her hands shaking with suppressed emotion. Outside the building, Wu was waiting, her face anxious. How bad? Bad, Maya said. He's going through with it. Full investigation. Shit! Wu fell into step beside Maya as they walked back toward the barracks. What did Barrett say when you told him? I haven't had a chance yet. This just happened. Go now, before Hawkins can spin this any further. Maya changed direction, heading toward battalion headquarters instead of the barracks. The admin building was busy at this hour, with Marines moving between offices on various errands. Maya announced herself to the desk sergeant and waited, her anxiety ratcheting higher with each passing minute. When she was finally shown into Colonel Barrett's office, she found not just Barrett but also Lieutenant Chan and, surprisingly, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. All three looked up as she entered, their expressions grave. Private Santos, Barrett said, we've been expecting you. Sit down. Maya sat, her eyes moving between the three of them, trying to read the room. Rodriguez looked angry, not at her, but on her behalf. Chin looked worried. Barrett's face was a professional mask. Hawkins briefed you on his investigation? Barrett asked. Yes, sir. Just now. Good. Then I'll be direct. Hawkins is making a play to have you transferred or, failing that, to have formal disciplinary action taken against you. He's leveraging his network of senior NCOs to build support for his position. It's effective political maneuvering, and it puts me in a difficult position. Barrett leaned forward, his elbows on his desk. However, there's something Hawkins doesn't know. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez has filed his own report on the incident. Maya's eyes snapped to Rodriguez, who nodded. I gave Barrett a complete account of what happened that day. Every detail, including how Hawkins specifically selected you and me for that demonstration, how he refused to stop the fight even when it was clear you were holding your own, how he pushed me to be more aggressive. Rodriguez's voice was steady but angry. I'm not going to let Hawkins rewrite history to cover his own ass. Rodriguez's testimony changes everything, Chin added. It undermines Hawkins's narrative completely. The question is how we use it. Barrett stood and walked to his window, looking out over the base. Here's the situation, Santos. We can fight this head-on. Use Rodriguez's testimony, my authority as battalion CO, and the statements from other Marines who witnessed the event to shut down Hawkins' investigation. We'll win, I'm confident of that, but it will make waves. Big waves. It will draw attention from higher up the chain of command, which means inspections, questions, scrutiny of our entire battalion. Or, Maya asked, sensing there was another option, or you request a transfer. Move to a different unit. Start fresh somewhere else. Avoid all the political fallout. Barrett turned back to face her. I want to be clear. I'm not ordering you to transfer. That's entirely your choice. But I need you to understand what you're choosing between. Fight and win, but create lasting friction in this unit. Or walk away. Preserve your career, let the dust settle. The room fell silent. Maya could feel the weight of 3 pairs of eyes on her, waiting for her response. This was it. The moment that would define not just her immediate future, but possibly her entire career. She could walk away, take the path of least resistance, find somewhere else where she'd be just another Marine. No target on her back, no political games, no Gunnery Sergeant Hawkins. But walking away would mean something else too. It would mean that Hawkins had won, that his tactics, the harassment, the public humiliation disguised as training, the political maneuvering, had worked. It would set a precedent that any female Marine who caused too much trouble could be quietly shuffled off to avoid conflict. Maya thought about Lieutenant Chen's story about burning out trying to be perfect. She thought about Rodriguez, who'd risked his own standing to tell the truth. She thought about Corporal Wu and the other female Marines who'd drawn strength from her victory. She thought about every woman who'd come before her in the Corps, who'd fought their own battles to open the doors Maya walked through. I'm not transferring, Maya said, her voice steady and clear. With respect, sir, I followed orders. I performed my duty. I'm not to run just because someone doesn't like the result. Barrett nodded slowly, and Maya saw approval in his eyes. I thought you'd say that. All right then. We fight. Rodriguez, you'll need to give a formal statement. Chun, coordinate with JAG to make sure we have all our legal ducks in a row. Santos, you continue as you have been. Exemplary performance, no missteps, nothing that could be used against you. Yes, sir. One more thing. Barrett's expression became even more serious. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Hawkins will escalate. He'll make your life miserable in every way he legally can. Are you prepared for that? Maya thought about the past 3 weeks, the constant pressure, the relentless self-criticism, the exhaustion to try to be perfect. Then she thought about the alternative, giving in, letting people like Hawkins dictate who belonged in the Corps and who didn't. Yes, sir, I'm prepared. The investigation that followed was exactly as brutal as Barrett had predicted. Hawkins initiated a series of surprise inspections of Maya's living quarters, finding minor discrepancies to document. He assigned her to extra duty rotations, always staying just within the bounds of what was technically allowed but clearly intended as punishment. He scheduled her for every undesirable task: cleaning duty, latrine maintenance, overnight watch shifts. But Maya endured it all with a grace that surprised even herself. She passed every inspection, completed every task assigned to her, never complained or showed weakness. And slowly, something began to shift. Other Marines noticed. They saw Hawkins' campaign of petty harassment, and they saw Maya refusing to break. Some of them, not all but some, began to speak up. Jackson filed a statement supporting Maya's account of fight. Wu organized other female Marines to document instances of disparate treatment. Even some of the male Marines who'd initially been skeptical came forward with their own stories of Hawkins' tactics. Rodriguez's formal testimony was the turning point. In a closed-door session with Colonel Barrett and representatives from the Inspector General's office, Rodriguez detailed not just a fight, but a pattern of behavior by Hawkins, using combatives' demonstrations as punishment, targeting female Marines for humiliation, creating hostile training environments. His testimony was damning, professional, and completely credible. 2 weeks after Maya had sat in Barrett's office and chosen to fight, she was called back. This time, only Barrett was present, and his expression was neutral. Private Santos, the investigation into the combatives' incident has been completed. The findings are as follows. No safety protocols were violated. All participants were following lawful orders, and the outcome of the match was legitimate and properly supervised. Barrett paused, consulting a document on his desk. Additionally, the investigation uncovered concerns about Gunnery Sergeant Hawkins' leadership style and training methods. He's been reassigned to a non-supervisory position pending additional review. Maya felt like she'd been holding her breath for weeks and could finally exhale. Sir, You don't need to say anything, Santos. You did your job. You conducted yourself with professionalism and integrity throughout this entire ordeal. That's all I ever asked of you. Barrett stood, extending his hand. You're a credit to this battalion and to the Marine Corps. Don't forget that. They shook hands, and Maya left the office feeling lighter than she had in months. Outside, the California sun was brilliant and warm, and the base seemed to sparkle with possibility. Wu was waiting for her, along with Rodriguez and Chun, their faces expectant. Well, Wu demanded, "It's over. Hawkins is reassigned. The investigation cleared me completely." The celebration was subdued but genuine. Marines didn't do emotional displays, but the relief and satisfaction were palpable. Rodriguez clapped Maya on the shoulder with gentleness that belied his size. "You did good, Santos. Real good." "We all did, Staff Sergeant. I couldn't have made it through this without all of you." That evening, at Rodriguez's combatives training session, something remarkable happened. The gym was more crowded than usual. Word spread about the investigation's outcome, and Marines wanted to be part of whatever was happening in that space. As Maya worked through techniques with Wu, she looked around and realized that the composition of the group had changed. More women, more diversity of size and background, more Marines who'd previously felt that combatives training wasn't for them. Rodriguez noticed it too. At the end of the session, he called everyone to the center of the mat. "I want to say something about what happened these past few weeks," Rodriguez began, his voice carrying easily through the large space. "This training group started as a way for Marines to improve their combative skills. But it's become something more than that. It's become a place where we prove that the Marine Corps values we talk about, honor, courage, commitment, aren't just words. They're actions." He turned to Maya. Private Santos took a stand when it would have been easier to walk away. She fought not just in a combat circle, but against a system that wanted her to fail. And she won both fights. That's what being a Marine looks like. The assembled Marines applauded, genuine, enthusiastic applause that made Maya's eyes sting with emotion. She looked around at the faces surrounding her. Rodriguez, who'd risked his career to tell the truth. Wu, who'd stood beside her through everything. Chun, who provided guidance and mentorship. Dozens of other Marines, some she knew well, and others she'd never spoken to, all of them united in this moment. "Thank you," Maya said, her voice thick. "All of you. This wasn't just my fight. It belonged to all of us." Later, as the session broke up and Marines filtered out into the warm evening, Maya found herself walking alone across the training grounds. She passed the combat circle where she'd faced Rodriguez weeks ago, now just a worn patch of dirt like any other. It seemed impossible that so much had changed because of what happened in that space. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Haven't heard from you in a while, Mija. Everything okay?" Maya smiled and typed back, "Everything's good, Mom. Really good. I'll call this weekend." As she pocketed her phone, Maya heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find Lieutenant Chun approaching, her expression warm. "Mind if I walk with you?" "Of course not, ma'am." They fell into step together, heading toward the barracks as the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple. "You know what I realized today?" Chin said. "When I told you about burning out as a lieutenant, about nearly washing out Corps, I was trying to warn you not to make the same mistakes I did. But you taught me something. Sometimes you have to push beyond what seems sustainable because the stakes are too high not to. You found that balance I'd lost. Working hard without destroying yourself. Standing firm without becoming rigid. I'm still learning, ma'am." "We all are. That's the point." Chin paused and added, "I put in a recommendation for you today. For promotion to Lance Corporal ahead of schedule. Barrett approved it. Congratulations." Maya stopped walking, stunned. Ma'am, thank you. Thank you so much. You earned it, Santos. Every bit of it. Chin smiled, a real smile, warm and proud. Now get some rest. You've got a long career ahead of you, and something tells me this is just the beginning. As Chin walked away, Maya stood alone in the gathering dusk, letting the weight of the past weeks finally settle. She'd won. Not just a fight with Rodriguez, but the bigger fight, the fight for respect, for recognition, for the right to serve on equal terms. It had cost her. It had pushed her to her limits and beyond. But she'd proven something that couldn't be taken away. That courage wasn't measured in feet and inches. That strength came in forms that couldn't be weighed. That belonging was earned through determination and skill and heart. The California stars were beginning to emerge overhead. Brilliant points of light against the deepening blue. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the warm air fill her lungs, feeling alive and strong and ready for whatever came next. Somewhere on this base, there was another female Marine facing the same doubts, the same obstacles, the same questions about whether she truly belonged. Maybe that Marine had heard about PFC Santos, about the fight, about standing your ground even when the odds were stacked against you. Maybe it would make a difference. Maya Santos started walking again, heading toward the barracks where Wu would be waiting with stories and jokes and plans for their next training session. Behind her, the combat circle where she'd made history sat empty and quiet, waiting for the next Marine who needed to prove themselves. Ahead of her stretched years of service, challenges and triumphs, victories and setbacks. But tonight, Maya Santos was exactly where she belonged, a United States Marine, tested and proven, walking toward tomorrow with her head held high and her future bright with possibility. The fight was over, and she had won.